Hello, my name is Stephen from K-Scale Models, and today I'm doing the second part of the 3D printing commissions. So, the original video was suggested to me by McConaman. He's got a YouTube channel, does a lot of 3D printing, airbrushing, custom gunpla, worth checking out if you haven't already. So, this one is going to be about 3D printing something. So you come to me and say, can you 3D print something? So this is going to be kind of how pricing is generally worked out. It's not exactly, everyone's got their own little thing, but this is the general rule of thumb that people will use when you come to us with it. And this also kind of applies for if you want me to make a file for you and then you want me to 3D print said file, then this is kind of the process. So let's go to a little explanation before we get started of manufacturing, because this is kind of what this is. This is manufacturing. Now, there's three broad types of manufacturing. There is individual product, in this case it's called job product or job production. Batch production, this is here represented by Miss Baker, or Mr. Baker, sorry. And the last one is called flow production. I would have called this mass production, but yeah. Okay, so let's go through it. So, Ms. Taylor makes custom items, one-off jobs. That's her job. Mr. Baker makes batches of between about 50 to 200 of an item every time he makes a batch. Then he goes and makes another batch of something completely different. So they're using a baker as an example. So it'd be like making bread in the morning, donuts in the afternoon, sausage rolls in the evening, whatever. You get the idea. He's making a bunch of products, but he's not making the same one. It's similar, but they're in batches. The final one is mass production. So this is Joe, the factory owner. He has a plant that makes iron brew, Coke, soda, whatever. He just makes soda and he makes lots of it. So there's a couple of sliding scales. Lowest to highest production, it goes that way. So low, medium, high. Setup cost goes that way as well. So Joe, the factory owner, is spending the most in setup. The baker here, Mr. Baker, you will be making. Well, he's got a couple of ovens, a store. Miss Taylor here has got some tools that she uses and a shop. So yeah, overheads. Joe, the factory owner, has the most. Now, skilled labor. Miss Taylor here is, for the sake of this one, the most skilled worker out of the three. So she is basically what you're paying for when you're getting an individual product, because she is making it. She's not getting a machine to make it. She is physically making it, so you're paying for her services. But she's a lot more flexible than, say, Joe, the factory owner's machines that he uses, because his skill sets are basically all in the office. Like, all the skilled laborers are in the office. The shop floor is generally unskilled labor, and there's not many of them because machines do most of the work, and the machines are very rigid in what they can do. So yeah, he can't really tool over to anything more than Dr. Pepper or Iron Brew or Cola. He can't change apart from making sodas. Mr. Baker, as you can see there, he makes bread, he makes donuts, whatever. As long as it goes in the oven, it'll go in the oven. So he's got a lot more flexibility in what he can do, but it's nowhere near the sort of customized level that Miss Taylor there makes. So why is this important? Well, there's two aspects. One, 3D printers are kind of in this area. They can either be custom jobs, one-off jobs, so you're doing it Miss Taylor style, or you can do it as batches. So batch production, what often happens for it, if you're doing, say, a low volume of a widget, what will happen is someone will come along and say, rather than tool up a factory just to make 200 of your widget, why don't you just go and get it 3D printed? And the other ways would be like CNC milled or something like that. Again, all very expensive processes per unit, but the overheads on said production is a lot less, because Joe, the factory owner here, has spent thousands and thousands of machines that do very specific uh, processes, and like they can't be changed at all. But if you're doing batch processes, well, give you an idea. I've worked for places where every job's different, and they were having to basically almost like Miss Taylor, but at the same time they were doing batches of things. So it was kind of Mr. Baker. So they were making batches of widgets on their laser cutter or plasma cutter or whatever. So yeah, they could a machine like that can change what it's doing, but there's limitations. So yeah, that's where we are with 3D printing. We're in here. We are not mass production. So the reason this is important is because mass production per unit of whatever's made is so much cheaper than, say, per unit of whatever Miss Taylor's making, because Miss Taylor is spending a lot of time herself having to do things. And again, it's going to be a lot cheaper than Mr. Baker here, because Joe, the factory owner, can basically buy his materials by the truckload, and will be doing so and getting a massive discount because of like economies of scale, deliveries. He's the only one ordering the truck, and the truck's not having to going out half empty to Mr. Baker here or something like that. So that is why it's important. And I often hear people say, "Oh, I can get this model cheap for 3D printing, or cheaper for 3D printing than I can from, say, Games Workshop." Now, yes, Games Workshop is ripping you off. There's no doubt about that. They are pricing their products at a certain level. They are looking and going, okay, Joe, Bob, whatever, is willing to pay this, so we will charge this. They are not charging how much it costs to make. Joe, the factory owner, is making that widget or model for pennies and selling it to you for £100. There is massive markups in some things, but same time, there is other ways of doing things. Now, this is not how the modeling world works. Be honest, there'll be somewhere between this. But anyway, you can do a lot of things with manufacturing. For instance, when I'm saying Joe, the factory owner, is making these for pennies and selling them for £100. Well, let's say it cost Mr. Baker here £200 to make it, but the market said this thing is only worth £100. Well, the only way for Mr. Baker to make a profit then is to up his manufacturing to the level of Joe, the factory owner. If he does that, and he makes them at a rate that will be below £100, he starts to make a profit. Now, he has a lot more overhead, and there's a lot of things that goes into this, and this is why manufacturing engineer is a profession in and of itself, and it's a degree level course. I study alongside guys that were doing the manufacturing side, and there's a lot more to this. I touched on this in my course because mechanical engineers have to be kind of generalists, so there is a lot to this. Now, this comes back to something I'll discuss later, but you get the idea. What you are paying over the counter for your model kit is not necessarily how much it costs to make. But when I'm doing my calculations here, I'm going to be doing it as if we're doing one-offs or we're doing it as batch manufacturing. And you'll see what it actually costs me to make things. You'll understand why pricing is the way it is and why it can sometimes be as high as it is. So let's move on to some of the models I'm working on. So you see here I've got a bunch of models for demonstration. So first one I'm going to use is this. I can't remember her name. It's from a game. A friend's asked for her, so I'm just going to make it. He's done all the favors for me in the past, so yeah. So anyway, the two things I'm looking for when I'm doing this is the price of the material and the time it takes. Now, I probably could have got the price down by hollowing this out. No, I needed that to be heavier. There's a reason for it, but anyway. So to be honest, material's not costing much. So let's go to my calculator here. So it's actually about 36 hours to print her. and the cost of materials was about 350. Let's just double check. Was it 350? 315. Okay, let's put 315 in. So this is the calculator I'm kind of using. This is not 100% on how you would do it. The hourly rate's different. I'm using one just to give you an idea of things. So time to print. This is how long it takes to print. Hourly rate. This is what I'm charging for you using my machine for an hour. So as I said, it's not quite right. I've times this all by a factor. So we go in here, we can see that times that times that plus my time, so 15, so that's £15. Materials, £3.15 times a factor per 2. That's because I found that with materials it's about a 1-to-1 ratio or close there to for the amount of materials used for printing as it is to cleaning and all the sort of things that go along with it. And that's where my time's coming in. My time is setting the printer up, cleaning the part afterwards, putting it in taking it off the printer, putting it in the IPA, then taking it out of the IPA a couple hours later and curing it. So yeah, that is why it's £15. So you see there that we're talking £75 right there. Now, to be honest, with this particular print, because it's so large and it took ages to make, I'd have done a factor of 2. The reason is that, as I say, if this fails, I'm liable for it. And this is what this factor is. It's a fudge factor in case of failure. If a print fails with me, I can't be out of pocket or else I'm out of a job. I'm not eating. So this is why I put this up front as part of the calculation. So 1.5 is what I normally do. But as I said, for large jobs, it would be 2, because if it's a single print, it's a large job, and it fails, I'm going to be basically out of pocket for a huge amount of money and a huge amount of time wasted. So that's where it comes from. Now, you might come to me and go, but my model is perfect. I've made it. It's not going to be an issue. Well, if I make a model, then this factor is 0, because it is just me that's, well, no, it's 1, sorry, just to keep the calculation balanced. If it's 0, this doesn't matter. But anyway, but yeah, you get the idea. It's 1. So it basically is not taken into account. But if you're providing the model and it's reasonably sized, it's 150 or 1.5. If it is a model that I have to source, well, it might go up to 2, because that's kind of what happened with that one there, is I did source the model. But let's just take your argument. Your model is perfect. I've worked in customer service enough to know that the customer's not always right. And one of the sad facts, and I've got stories to tell about customer service where a customer has been very much not right. But anyway, this is a model that was sent in for me to print by a fellow engineer. So, professional. He knows his stuff. He's a very clever guy. He's done a lot of work with injection molding, but not 3D printing, and wants this thing knocked up. This is, in case you haven't worked out, a core booster section from the original Gundam show. So, this is the original one he gave me. Now, those that are in the know of 3D printing are probably looking at go, why is that hollow there? That's not how I would hollow it. And that's correct. I've then hollowed it. Now, this print failed multiple times. So, just go through all the pictures I've got here. Nope, wrong way. But yeah, these are all the pictures of failed prints and saying to him, look, your print didn't work because this was pulling too much of a vacuum, or suction as most people call it. I call it a vacuum because engineer, that's how we talk. But yeah, you can see that, yeah, this is just, there's warpage all over the place. All caused by this pulling vacuum when it, like, it's built not the way that it should be for this kind of model. So eventually I went back to him and said, look, this isn't working, this is what you need to do. So he gave me this model and it worked first time. So I lost money on this job. And this is the job that made me put that factor in. Because if I don't put this factor in, then it's going to come back to bite me and I'm going to lose money and I'm not going to eat. So I want to eat. I want to eat steak. I might not be able to afford steak, but I'd at least like to eat. So that is where that factor is, and that's why it's there. Now, this is more likely to be the job that you come to me with. I'll just So this is kind of me printing up some odds and ends because a print that I was working on this morning failed, and I also needed a couple of extra turrets for something. So these are M36 turrets for toon tanks, and this is bits for the Dotris tank. Kind of in the process of getting that up for sale. I'm going to be changing bits regarding how much that costs, so yeah, you'll probably see the price change for that shortly. But anyway, this is the sort of print for this. Now, this is the sort of typical job I would get. I would want little widget here, a figure here, just one-off items. Now, if I'm doing this as a one-off print, I'm charging you for the one-off print. Now, this is where those details come in. So let's run the numbers. So I'm going to take this. So it was a 6.5 hour print, and the material cost was about 60 pence. So we can see right here that is £26. Now that is for one person asking for one object essentially. But let's just say you come back to me and go, well, how much for two of those? Okay, well, it doesn't change the maths much. It's the same height, so it doesn't change the time to print. But this might go up to 70 pence. It might go up to £1. You see, it doesn't cost me a huge amount extra. So when I'm doing when I'm factoring this in, I'll probably go, you know what? You want an extra one of those? £2. So you get the idea. You will be charged £25 for this particular print. But if you go and say, oh, how much if I add a second one on, you'll only be paying 27 for the whole thing in total for two items. And if you're the first time you're working with resin, 3D printed resin, you might be unfamiliar with material, you might get something wrong. There's no harm in getting a second one. And for me, as the seller, I'm perfectly happy for that. I'm not wasting build space. I'm not wasting time in a little project that's barely any worth to me. So yeah, this is kind of how I would do it. If you're asking for a print and they come back with a price, ask how much for a second one. If they come back and say it's ridiculously high, what they are probably doing is they're doing what I've kind of done here. I've got two different prints on this. So yeah, I've got toon tanks bits, I've got bits for tanks. So in actual fact, this is costing me about, well, factor of one, it's costing me about £7 for this. But you get the idea, is that yeah, it becomes quite expensive. And to be honest, this particular print isn't really worth it, but it's getting a bunch of almost kits into full kits, and that's worth it for me. So in that case, I will do this. But it's only when I've got like free time on the printer. I've got free time now. So this is where we kind of get into batch printing. So let's take this one. So this is 4.5 hours. So we'll plug in 4.5 here. Material cost for this particular print. This is the Drake, by the way. It's 65 pence. So materials 0.65. Now this comes to £23. Now, right off, you'll notice that this particular print, when I'm selling it, is not £23. It's only 15. And that particular part is only one bit of it. So first off, let's knock that factor down to 1. Now, okay, that changes it down to £20. So that's not a huge difference there. So, yeah. Now, let's go and get the other parts. Now, there is another part that I'm not doing for this, just for the sake of time. And that's the stand. But let's just go with this. So this is the actual hull of the Drake. You can see I've got 6 printed off. And looking at this, I actually am tempted to put a 7 for 8 for long here, just to make up the time. Now, that takes just over 10 hours, so let's plug 10 hours into this. I've kind of done the calculations already for you, but I changed this to 1. So, that alone cost me £27 to make, but there's 6 of them, so it cost me £4. Now, there's another bit that I'm not showing. This is if I'm making this solely on my Mars Pro. I make this part on my Saturn, and I make 3 of them. So that's where this calculation comes in. And oh, that actually starts to look sensible. That's about £11. But that, be honest, if you're thinking, okay, I'm charging 15, that is not actually a reasonable markup for me. So you will probably find that a lot of my items go up in price because I've been doing them on the cheap just to try to get sales and sort of feel out the market, doing a bunch of other things. The prices will go up, and this is the reason why is this is actually how much it costs. And as I said, I'm not even doing this right. There should be £2 an hour or something, because I need to work out how much it costs for the screen, how much it costs for electricity, because that's not taken into account with all this. So yeah, you get the idea. This is where the costs come from. This is the sort of thing you can do to save yourself a bit of money by asking for multiple prints on the same print. And this is when we're doing batch printing at, like, say, you see someone on eBay and Etsy selling multiple things. This is what we're doing. We're making multiple of them on the same print, or we're doing stuff where we're breaking the small parts off onto their own print, and then we're putting the taller items onto another. Yeah, another way you can do this is you can lie these all flat, but to get best quality, I do it this way. So, yeah. So, thank you for listening.